And we're picking up on, surprisingly, neither of the characters that are actually on the screen. If you pay close attention, you might notice that one of them is a character that is, well, power set that are presently in testing. Sneak preview. Uh, no, I'm still working out a build for this. Anyways, so uh, while that's getting a little bit of a passive farm on, we'll get started looking back on the archery ninjutsu Sentinel. Now, uh, the last build that I did effectively had two different takes on retaining soft cap to smashing melee. I'm sorry, soft caps to melee, range, and AoE, and mitigating the knockback on explosive arrow. I've done a quick look through all of the other archery builds that I've done, and in every single one, I've mitigated the knockback on explosive arrows. So, mm, I I don't know what I was thinking and not planning for a mitigation. Uh, and to kind of go on to continue from this point of the character in is focusing on how do I want this character to work? What do I imagine this character to be? And one of the reasons why I took Ninja Tool Mastery is that, well, it goes with Ninjitsu. But does Ninjitsu really fit with the character? And previously, I'd ran up several different tertiary builds, and I normally use an electric framework. And given that electric is what I normally go with for Sentinels because of lightning field, that's kind of where we'll start with a report, if you will. Is I have not saved this. Save as R2 maneuvers, and the other one as file save as R2 blinding powder. Okay, and we're actually going to go back and no, we're just going to go forward. As silly as that sounds. Okay, we're going to predicate on the maneuvers build because that may be the easiest one to work with. And the first thing I'm going to do is make sure I got the right build up top. Okay, here we go. That's as I make sure I got the right work window where I want it. Wow. And this should be okay. Let's swap those windows. So we work on this one. And we'll move you to the background. And double check. Okay. Mouse and windows are realigned. Okay. What I think I want to do is I want to either convert explosive arrow all the way to sudden acceleration or convert it to overwhelming force, which is what I've got on most of the other archery builds, one of those two. And for right now, if I convert this to overwhelming force, and we'll just go with a 5 slot because I don't need knockback protection. And we can free up a slot on the end for getting rid of the sudden acceleration. So we now do slots and enhancement slots, auto range all slots. And we see that I now need to make up around 5% AoE defense. Now I can pick up some AoE defense on the Lotus drops just by filling in the avalanche. And now I've only got to make up 42%. I've only got to make up yeah, I'm at 42%, so I just need like 3% will put me over. I'm at 49% ranged. Real quick check. I'm not running any incarnate powers, so I can sacrifice a ranged defense for an AoE defense. How much ranged defense can I sacrifice, and where can I sacrifice it at? I have plenty of ranged defense in Annihilation. I am presently not. There's Winter's Bite, there's Blistering Cold. I do not appear to be using Frozen Blast. And Frozen Blast will give me a very powerful AoE. So the question is, if I drop Artillery, will I still be in range soft gap? So let's drop Artillery all the way down with Frozen Arrows. Okay, we are all the way down. We are at 45.33%. So, yes, dropping Artillery, I am staying with maneuvers into range soft cap. And as we fill this out, okay, we are back up to melee ranged AoE with only 5 slots. I don't need that 5th slot, which means I can free this up. And I can either mitigate the endurance consumption on maneuvers a little bit more, or pick up some more recharge in Shinobi Eerie. And let's see, Boruku is just an auto. Right now, we're just going to kind of plan on defense endurance recharge, because if I look at, I'm still at 85% recharge. And I already know from the blinding powder build that when I went from 85% to 70% recharge, I only lost at maximum 4 seconds on the longest recharge power. So it wasn't really a big practical hit. This now, okay, gives us another power, but we've got some more end drain mitigated. We'll do window, set some bonuses. I'm not hard capping on anything, so this may actually be a uh, better build. We are still soft capped to melee, range, and AoE. We're actually a little high on melee and AoE, so maybe I could, if I take maneuvers off, it's like I could change maneuvers to combat jumping, uh, and then save 2 slots and put them elsewhere, but I'm not sure where else uh, where I would benefit, whereas maneuvers gives me some benefit to my teammates. So this, on the surface, appears to be a slightly um, better take on fixing explosive arrow. So we're just going to save this as Ninjitsu weapon R3. We're not going to bother with the maneuvers or a blinding powder designation. I think in previous live stream I said I wasn't a big fan of blinding powder to begin with. Same reason the recharge formula for blinding powder in Chimera Dama, I think are fundamentally broken. Uh, They're not designed. It's one of those burn the cottage. They were screwed up to begin with. But I'm now a little bit more happier with this particular take because I'm not sacrificing too much end drain. I am being a little bit more useful to my teammates, and we'll build further from here. So go ahead and sync up in the background. Actually, I probably should start titling these R2 maneuvers, R3, file save, file save. Okay, now let's open up Sentinel, R3. All right, and we're going to go through and uh, look at some other power sets. Well, no, I don't want to. You're not my work window. Yes, I want to discard. All right, let's come back to my work window, and we're going to drop Ninja Tool Mastery, and we're going to go. I'm going to go to Ice Mastery first, and I'm going to look up. All right, going to get off of info. We're going to take Ice Sword, Block of Ice, Frozen Aura. And I know as much as I slag on Snowstorm, you're going to see me take Snowstorm here. And there's a couple reasons why I'm going to take Snowstorm. And this actually came up in a last night's Richty Mothership raid, where a player asked me for clarification on leave the toggles on the grates. When you are running a Richty Mothership raid, for practical purposes, due to the zone cap, which is something like 50 players, if you have a full team, that's 8 times 6. That's eight. That's eight players per team. 6 teams. 8 times 6 is 48. You can only have two more players in the zone. Period. With that kind of limitation on how many players can actually be in the zone, there is a practical limitation to how many mothership grades you can realistically take down. Now, if you're being creative and you've got two different teams running, you can jump through some steps and uh, take down 12 greats, but the return on the benefit doesn't really help anything. It's, for the most part, taking down 6 greats. Just roll with the just roll with it, and if you really want to extend your time, just run the event again. So kind of keeping that in mind, explaining to another player, when you place a toggle debuff on the grades, radiation infection, innervating field, snowstorm, darkest night, the Rikti that spawn around those grates will target towards the caster of that debuff. Now, if the caster is sitting in the middle of the big green bubble and in the midst of all the buffs and flying around in the center of the bowl, then the caster has a fair shot of living as the Rikti charge in. And that way you can get more Rikti to feed the green monster in the bowl simply by having a toggle debuff. And now, as much as I slag on Snowstorm for being impractical, not having a whole lot of use, if you're running Rikti Mothership raids, that's a compelling reason to toggle debuff a great, because you realistically are only going to take down 6, and there's three channels, 3 entries onto the mothership, and each of those entries has 6 greats, so you've got at least 12 greats that probably weren't taken down. So if you're kind of keeping that in mind, that you're only taking down 6 greats, you've got 12 greats. 4 of those greats can reliably be accessed by players who can be within range without any range extensions. Can drop a toggle debuff and sit in the bowl. You can now have your toggle players, your controllers, your defenders, bringing in extra aggro. Or if you've got a Sentinel do it, a Sentinel who has armor, your Sentinel might be a little bit better equipped to drop a toggle and bring enemies in while still targeting from range. So that's a compelling reason to go down and take Snowstorm, say, instead of Frostbite. Yes, you could get a little bit more damage out of Frostbite, uh, but for concept, for concept utility being useful to your teammates, there's something to be said for Snowstorm and the Mothership Raid. It's also Snowstorm. There are specific applications, say like the Rickety dropship that charges around, where Snowstorm can definitely help slow the dropship down and give your slower moving players time to get in and get their shots in. So another good reason maybe to have Snowstorm for a particular scenario. Now this is limited to a single event. Snowstorm's not very effective on the First Ward's giant monster, the not the Avatar, the Hamadon seed of Hamadon. Snowstorm doesn't do anything to stop that monsters or slow that monsters, and Snowstorm is incredibly ineffective on the Arachnos Flyer and Grandville. So all of the other places where giant monsters are moving around, Snowstorm just doesn't give you any benefit at all. But for the toggle grade debuff, yeah, yeah, it might be. It's if I was making a build for myself, I'd just go with Frostbite, or I might go back and grab Blinding Powder and put Cloud Senses in Blinding Powder, which completely valid build there as well. Is swap in Blinding Powder, Cloud Senses, and that way we also pick up a bit of recharge. So that's two different ways you could go about this, and the logic behind taking actually for why you might want to take one particular approach over the other. Uh, Also of note is Blinding Powder does accept Confuse, and this was something I hadn't thought about. But if you do Contagious Confusion and will actually rock the Confuse up, you can still pick up a very powerful ranged defense at the top end, which is very useful. And you also pick up a 10% recharge time, which is also useful. You also pick up a very powerful recovery boost, useful. You pick up a very good damage buff, very useful. Um, when I check my sets and bonuses now, I'm actually capped on a recovery cap. I'm not capped on anything else. Check my totals, and I'm at 48, 46, 48 on melee ranged AoE. And my recharge is at 88%, so I've actually bumped my recharge. So this approach might be more useful for a wider variety of scenarios, but you still have just a ludicrous amount of time. Blinding Powder coming back around, 41-second recharge with an 11-second duration. This is just bad design. The formulas are broken. But we'll save this as R3 Ice, okay, or R3 Blinding Powder, or Ice Blinding powder, file, save as, Ice Blinding Powder. And just for reference, we'll also swap Blinding Powder out for Snowstorm. I'm not going to bother plussing it because I probably wouldn't actually run this build. And we do lose a bit of recharge going this way. Our recharge is at 78.75%, but we already know that's not really causing us too much damage, and so this is our 3 Ice Snowstorm. And file, save as, Ice Snowstorm. Okay, and now just for reference, what we could do if we had Frostbite in there. Now, Frostbite, we know we're looking for some ranged defense. And if we look around at our various powers, okay, we've got some. How much range defense do we actually need to pick up? Look to here, we do need to pick up a little bit. So we could either go slow again and get that range defense later on. We could go artillery and have that damage buff and the regeneration buff. We could go trap of the hunter. Why? I don't know, but the option is there. And okay, let's just for argument's sake, we'll just do artillery. And again, I'm not plussing this in. And now I can see that we're now at 48, 45, 48 on our melee ranged AoE, so we're still in the soft cap. And our recharge is at 78.75%. A little bit of a step down. Um, and if we check Frostbite, we now see that its damage is terrible. But we now do have an additional mitigation for, and this is described as range targeted AoE. Um, and it's more described as mass immobilize. And that also might be useful if you're doing mass immobilize, then you can be more sure that you can drop rain of arrows or explosive arrows on them. So there's a compelling reason to take Frostbite, overtaking Snowstorm or overtaking Blinding Powder. So we'll save this as R3 Ice Frostbite. Okay. All right, let's see what other options we got. If we look at Dark Mastery, which does fit with the shadows, we could go Smite. Oh, oops. Let's make sure that we're started on 35. Smite. And then, well, we have a PBOE and a ranged, uh, so we can probably swap our slotting like this and do Engulfing Darkness. We got a Pold, and then we have Darkest Night. Now, Darkest Night, like Snowstorm, does give us that does give us the toggle debuff that would be useful for a mothership raid. Would also be more useful in a lot more other scenarios because Darkest Night does minus damage and minus 2 hit as a defense based character. It, of course, is ludicrously, painfully obvious how much debuffing an enemy's ability to hit the player is a very compelling reason to take a specific power. If they have a harder time hitting you and you've got high defenses, they're going to have a really hard time hitting you. You also get minus defense. Okay. Ranged defense. We get some ranged in Superior and Tomb. What's our damage look like? But this is Netherworld Graph. It's a rather high damage power. We're looking at a very hefty base there, so we probably don't want to take a hold. Now, we possibly could do Basilisk Gaze and then maybe something else to add in some damage. Give us both a and what can we get for 4 slots? Or how much defense do we got to make up? We got to make up actually a lot of range defense. Uh, so Basilisk Gaze alone is not going to close the gap. We need at least something with that 3.75 ranged. Now, we do know that Thunderstrike gives us a very powerful ranged. we're already using Winter's Bite elsewhere in Perfect Shot. Now, uh, not really anything here that we could change Perfect Shot out to. It's not actually a snipe. So uh, we could go extra nasty and have a debuff. And if we had a damage hold, that would be interesting, but we don't have a damage hold that I know of. I'm not seeing one. Alright, so of our damage powers, the only one that really gives us range defense is Thunderstrike, and we're not picking up much of anything else. If we look at Nether Tentacles, well, that's an Immobilize. That does give us the cone, but it is a cone. So Netherworld Graph, we'll just fill it out with Thunderstrike. See, this is an interesting question. With Thunderstrike and Basilisk Gaze, no, that's still not enough. Well, it's not going to be enough slot to do anything interesting. Okay, our damage now on Netherworld Grasp is, well, not great. Uh, but our totals we're at 48, 45, 48. So we're still soft cap 2 or 3 defenses. And it's okay. And we'll do this dark. Uh, we're not going to bother with Netherworld Tentacles, because all it does is just mobilize. And it's a cone, not a TAOE. So you have to be lined up with the target you're trying to mobilize. Alright, so file save as Ninjitsu weapon R3 dark. Give me a minute while I get my tank here to the next junction. Toss down Darkest Night on these guys. Alright, and Fire Sword Circle up. Okay. So that's what Dark Mastery looked like. Electric Mastery, the one I probably always use. Okay, let's make sure we're centered there. Havoc Punch, Lightning Field, and just for kicks, we're going to go Rehabilitating Circuit. And we're going to preemptively change our health down here to a Panacea. And the reason I'm doing that is because I already know that the Mina has a very powerful range defense late in the build. And we'll pick up Paralyzing Jolt, which will... Okay, Paralyzing Jolt is just a stun. I thought it was a whole Chain Fences, Immobilize. Okay, we'll do Chain Fences. And we'll just toss in a Damage Accuracy Endurance. Lightning Field. Okay. First thing we're going to do is fill out Havoc Punch with Blistering Cold. Because what we need to do is fill the PBAOE. Now, most of my lightning fields I do Fury of the Gladiator 3 slots and then put the slots elsewhere. In this case, though, I am looking to make up melee defense. I'm still soft capped to ranged and AoE, but I'm... Okay. Do I have anything that real quickly gives me melee defense early? No, it's just obliteration. And that gives me melee at there. So that's ranged defense, no melee defense. Chain fences, not going to give me any melee defense. Double check that. No. There's melee defense on a field operation. Whoop-de-doo. Okay, so I'm kind of at least, for the moment, without any place else to pick up some melee defense, kind of stuck into having to put Avalanche on Lightning Field. And that'll clear me back over the melee defense mark and give me a knockdown for anything that's within, well, steps into the Lightning Field. Alright, and there we are, 48, 45, 48. Alright. And Paralyzing Jolt was the stun, not a hold. So we'll just leave it like that. And we'll save as... We'll do this one, R3 Electric. Since I'm kind of not intending this to be a passive... Or I'm not intending the character to pull off passive farming stunts. Probably not a big deal that I'm not maximizing the damage return on putting a resist debuff in Lightning Field. Alright, where was I? File. Save as. This is R3 Electric. See if we got anything else that makes a compelling case for itself. Fire Mastery. Come on. Settle in on Fire Mastery. Make sure we're selected. 35. Alright, we're starting off with Cremate. Fire Sword Circle. Warmth. Char. And this is kind of an easy fill-in. Char just gets an Entomb. Warmth, same thing as before. We're going for the Numina set. And I've mentioned before, this is a... I've used this on a AR SR Sentinel. And the entire reason I did that, the problem with Rehabilitating Circuit is that while it's very useful for healing teammates at range, there's no good way to heal the player. You have to be within range of the chain, and the chain has to come back around to you to be healed by Rehabilitating Circuit, which is not always the most feasible of actions to have occur. However, fire, on the other hand, with warmth, since warmth will always heal, you just have to get close to the teammate and trigger warmth. So it's a compelling reason to go with warmth. Alright, final heat. R3 fire. Okay. Alright, which one am I? Actually, we've done ice. Leviathan. Leviathan is kind of a hard pass. There's just nothing in here that's compelling unless you're going for the shark theme. And you can use one of the other builds. There's nothing special in here worth talking about. Mace Mastery, kind of the same thing. It's, well, not really. Okay. We'll work up Mace Mastery because nothing else will really fit cleanly. And coordinated targeting. We'll just put a, because this is going to have a hideous end cost. It's at 0.78 per second. Summon Tarantula will pick up some range defense in call Expedient Reinforcements. And Web Cocoon. I already know that Entomb has our energy negative, so we will have to swap something around elsewhere. and we'll see just how bad uh, it is. We may be swapping to Sovereign Right on to pick up the melee defense there. And Pulverize gets Blistering Cold. This is one of those moments where the intuitive way that you would normally go about building may not apply here because of the sets that are available, because you don't have a PBAOE power in Mace at all. And if we check our totals, we're at 43, 47, 48. Now, if I take out the ranged here, I actually drop below range soft cap, which now means Sovereign Right would put me back into melee soft cap, and Blood Mandate would give me AoE and ranged, and I could drop a slot from Web Cocoon, so let's do a real quick pass through here. That was Defense Psionic. That's Defense AoE. So we'll fill out Blood Mandate for our Summon Tarantula. I'm not going to bother with plussing it because there's no recharges in here, just all damage. And then we'll look and see what our numbers look like. All right, with Blood Mandate in place, we're really high on AoE, we're high on ranged, and we're still low on melee. So we could take a slot from Web Cocoon, and now we're still high on ranged, we're still high on AoE, and we may actually have enough ranged where we could take a second slot from Web Cocoon. And without that range, we could actually swap Web Cocoon around for Baseless Gaze. And now we've picked up a recharge, and we've picked up 2 slots. Alright, we're still high on AoE, and we're still low on melee, so we need something that will pick us up some melee, but we can drop AoE on. Now I know that if I come down here to Frozen Blast on Fistful of Arrows and take that off, you can see we're still soft cap on AoE, but there are no options here to give us a melee defense. So take them from the targeted AoE, not really an option. And what other powers can we look at? Rain of Arrows is a targeted AoE, so we don't have any melee settings there. Snapshot is a high recharge, and we have a defense range, defense psionic. We don't have any melee defenses to choose from. Coordinated targeting, well, it's got Gaussian, but nothing there to get us some melee defense. We have 2 slots to play with. We can resolve. Well, we got some melee defense, but it's pump 5. We need 2 more slots after that. Interestingly, though, we could potentially take them from Web Cocoon, because we really don't need the ranged in Web Cocoon. So we could take all those slots, come down to Weaken Resolve, take Weaken Resolve out, and there's actually another one in here. We get some in Siphon Insight, which would also work. Well, we're already using Siphon Insight, and we could pick up some AoE, which is, we're picking up some ranged here. So, no slots left. We'll take this out with Siphon Insight. I won't bother plussing them up right now because we're not worried about the specific performance. Okay, now let's check our totals, and we're very high on AoE, decent, and we're at melee and range soft cap, so we can lose potentially the AoE soft cap here. Now, if we look back at our recharge intensive pets, we can pick up ranged, which is what we just dropped on, by going back to recharge intensive pets called arms. So we'll swap into ranged. Not even plussing it up because it really doesn't matter. All right, and we're going to swap our web cocoon here to entomb, and now let's check our figures. All right, we're still high on AoE. We're at 45, 45, 49. And we'll swap health here back to Numina Regeneration Recovery. But there we go. We've uh, empowered a pool debuff, which if we check our info, we can resolve, has a duration of 15 seconds, and now we've given a recharge of under 12 seconds, and it does minus defense, minus 2 hit. Uh, kind of like some other powers that we've seen, but here the duration and return is not fundamentally broken. Just saying. Alright, so would I make this build? Oh, hell no. I would not do this. But if you are, for whatever reason, obsessed with having a mace attack for your character, if you're like playing a former Arachnos, well, there you go. And we'll just drop from, wow. And that is not going to change nicely. Since we already have an idea of what those are going to take, we'll go back to Leviathan Mastery, Knockout Blow. Alright, Spirit Sark Jaws, Summon Coralax, and Arctic Breath. And Arctic Breath will give it an Accuracy Endurance. Summon Coralax will get the Now, you might be wondering, why didn't I just go back and drop those slots from Recon Resolve? Because we still need that Smashing Lethal and AoE, because there's not, well, what was Arctic Breath? Yeah, Arctic Breath was a TAoE, no melee in it at all. School of Sharks is a ranged cone, no melee AoE in it at all. Spirit Shark Jaws is a hold, not a whole lot of option for melee defense. So once again, we're stuck back at where can we get that melee defense from we can resolve. And Knockout Blow. Now, this is one of the few places where, okay, if you want to take Knockout Blow and put Blistering Cold in it, it's actually a fairly good idea because Knockout Blow has a hold, and when Blistering Cold procs, you basically get double hold. But again, I would not. I would not be making this. You're giving up too much to fit a singular concept. Leviathan. Okay. Let's see what else is in here. All right. Whoa. Are you swapping? All right. Moo Mastery. All right. We've done Electric Mastery. Moo Mastery has a lot in common with Electric Mastery and not a lot at all. And once we look through our powers, we have a targeted AoE, a melee, PB AoE, a ranged miner, a ranged cone, and a pet. So we're probably going to need to be keeping we can resolve. All right, we want our hold. We'll take the pet. And we'll go with static discharge just to fill it out, although this might be, someplace else where anything else might make more sense. Static discharge. We'll do damage, accuracy, endurance, summon adept. We'll get the recharge. Okay, you do have, you could go preemptive optimization and get the ranged, but you're giving up some recharge time and you're giving up the resist bonus aura that will help the pet stay alive if you're going this way. And electric shackles, we'll just get the entomb. Thunder strike, foe disorient, foe knockback. All right, and we have a 5% defense melee and fire cold here. We got a defense melee and obliteration that has no knockback chance. We only need to make up melee defense right now. We're doing fine on ranged and AoE. So this is one of the few places where looking at, say, obliteration, we go deep on it, we get a little bit more recharge, and we'll still cross the line into 46, 45, 46. So you get a PBAOE, you get a pet, you still kind of have some dump powers going on, and you're still putting a lot of emphasis on a pool power debuff, but you can make it work. R3 move. Alright. Ninja tool we've done. We'll go all the way down to Soul Mastery. Soul Mastery, we'll start with Midnight Grasp, and then we'll do Darkest Night, and then we'll do the Pet, and then we'll do Soul Storm. Alright, this one is not... This is probably the least terrible of all the tertiaries with a pet in them, at least for this build. Because we don't have a lot of slots to play around with or things to do given our armor sets, our previous available IOs, how we want these powers to all work together, the ones we definitely have to mitigate. We do pick up a toggle debuff, which would be great for Rikti Mothership raids. We can augment the minus immobilize and midnight grasp with the hold and blistering cold. And that's always interesting when you immobilize and hold something. So this is actually very useful for, say, a mothership raid where you're fighting the dropship, simply because you have a power where if you can get in close, you have both a chance to land and immobilize or a hold, which will help all your other teammates. And you can land another hold with Soulstorm. So close in, put Midnight Grasp on Q, let Midnight Grasp go off, hit Soulstorm. There you go. This is the least terrible of all of the. Well, there's a pet in here. What are we gonna do with it? So R3 Soul. If I was doing a pet build or one of the ones with a pet, this would be the one that I would probably look at. All right, let's move on and look at Psionic Mastery. Psionic Mastery, okay, we've got a Faux Sleep, we've got Mind Probe, we've got Dominate, we've got Psychic Shockwave, and we've got Link Minds. And that last one may be a little interesting. First of all, we'll pick back up Blistering Cold on Mind Probe. Psychic Shockwave, we don't have to worry about any knockback, so we can safely slot our Avalanche into it. And we're going to come up here to Weaken Resolve, and we're just going to go ahead and take these two off, so that we're actually going to go ahead and drop them all the way back down so we have all 5 slots to play with. Alright, and now looking at our defenses, we're strong on melee, strong on AoE, we're not doing so great on ranged. So we'll do slots enhancement, slots auto range all slots. Dominate, we know we can pick up Thunderstrike, we could pick up Entomb. I don't know, Entomb's not going to close the gap. We could pick up Lockdown. We also have Link Mines. Now, Link Mines has a duration of 90 seconds and a recharge, and it'll take defensive powers. And it'll also take 2 hit powers. We're already using Gaussian, and now we have some slot to play with. We already know for Hold that we'll get some defense range out of Basilisk Gaze. So for right now, we're just going to quasi-slot and Basilisk Gaze. We're going to come down here to Link Mines, and we're going to pick up a Defense Global Recharge. We're going to pick up Defense Recharge. We're going to come up here and pull this slot Scaling Resist Damage. Going to come back down to Link Mines, and we're going to do Defense Recharge Time. We're going to do the Scaling Defense proc. Slots and enhancement, auto arrange all slots. I'm going to come back up to Dominate and finish filling this in with okay. And now let's check our recharge on Link Mines. We are only at 115.4. And our totals are, we're at 48, 43, 48. Okay. What we'll do right now is we'll take a slot there and likely take both slots since we only need 2 for the range defense. And we'll come back down slots, auto range all slots, and that should give us the 2 extra slots there. And now I'll do a look at the Gambler defense endurance. We actually know we'll the defense amount won't be important, but the recharge amount might be. We'll do endurance recharge, and we'll do endurance recharge. Now we check our numbers. We're at recharge time 99.8%. We are still not near perma. We're at 104. And we look over at total. We're still at 48, 43, 48. We'll chunk on Link Mines, and suddenly we're at 53, 48, 53. This is one where we'll go up to, and we'll do Spiritual Core, Paragon. All right, and now check our totals. Well, it's not being calculated. Oh, that's a nice bug to see. Let's try Agility Radio Paragon. Still not being calculated. All right. If you can get Link Mines very close to being permanent, and with that much recharge, you could make this build work as well. As you can see, the recharge of agility is not being applied to Link Mines. And if we check our totals, this does actually put us boosted like that. If I just did defense endurance recharge for both of these, we'll see that we're getting really, really close Well, with agility on there, that didn't really change much. But you're getting close to melee and AoE incarnate soft cap, if not practically into incarnate soft cap, with any kind of two-hit debuff in play, or anyone else boosting you with any kind of defense. Uh, we'll switch this back to endurance recharge for the maximum amount of recharge. So that is a plausible build, and something else that you could do here. Set some bonuses. Since we have a free slot here, you could drop Unleash Potential, which is just there to hold a, and we'll take the one from Reactive Defenses, and we'll turn Agility off, and we'll check we're still at Yellow Cap. We'll go to Hasten, and we'll Perma Hasten. Alright, or we'll get close to it. Let's check our values. Hasten is right now 50 plus 5, 163 out of 120. Turn it on, we're at 130.6. Look at Link Mines, we're at 87.38. Click on Agility Radio Paragon, go back, and we're within 2-second perma of Hasten. So yes, you could go this method and perma link effectively well, you would be at perma link mines, not quite to perma hasten, and have a build that can help both your teammates and keep yourself soft cap. Now, this would be a high level build only, because it only works with agility radial paragon, or potentially since you really don't need the defense boost if you're running link mines, if you're running spiritual core. And Spiritual Core would also help you elsewhere with Kujin and Sha. Uh, so just another factor to keep in mind. Now, which one would I probably do? I'm probably leaning towards the ice, one of the ice builds, simply because I like the ice. Frozen Aura fits more with the Chimera Dama. And we'll look at that in a second after I save this. So this was R3 Psi. File, save, or Psi, link mind. Perma, link mind. Save as, R3 Psi, perma, link mines. And we'll bring up one of the ice builds, Sentinel. Okay. R3 Ice, Frostbite. If we look at Blinding Powder for a second, we'll go back and check this build. Blinding Powder doesn't really buy me anything, but I could go Siphon Insight, drop Blinding Powder, and pick up the ranged and the recharge time and cloud senses. And we'll just see what that looks like for a second. Drop Blinding Powder. Take the slot from Blinding Powder. And we're actually just going to put in Kujiretsu there. And we can resolve. We'll go. We want Cloud Census this time. And there's actually a couple different ways I could go with this, but we'll work this one first. I could go Kujin and Retsu, which will take a defense set and check our windows, set some bonuses. I'm still not capped. I'm now at 92% recharge, and I'm at melee 48, 45, 48. So I'm still well in the soft cap. Now, what I could do here is maybe take some slots from swap maneuvers to combat jumping. Wouldn't be very useful to my teammates. And let's do a real quick check here. Maneuvers is currently base 2.28%. I'm only pulling in 3% defense total. If I go leaping, combat jumping, base 1.75%. Alright, I would actually drop out of range soft cap if I did that, but then I could maybe pick up range soft cap elsewhere. Uh, this is something where I like the idea of using combat teleport to get in close and use frozen aura just to stomp the ground. That fits in with the stomp the ground of mighty leap, knock enemies down, freeze enemies, knock them down. I got lots of different ways to get out of a specific scenario if I'm in over my head and return to blasting from range. So I kind of, thematically, I like this approach a lot. Now, it is putting my build up or my double build up into aim combat teleport, so I'd have to hit aim, hit combat teleport in order to get both build up to activate at once. It would actually. Eh, what am I at on time? Okay, we're actually over an hour, so I'm gonna cut it here and come back to finalizing a build for myself.